Right now, as you are watching this, three of the world's oldest and most powerful religions are in the middle of their most sacred seasons. Jews are celebrating Purim, a festival of survival and divine deliverance. Muslims are observing Ramadan, a holy month of fasting, prayer, and spiritual purification. And Christians are in the middle of Lent, a season of sacrifice, reflection, and repentance. Three faiths, 3 billion followers, three simultaneous pleas to God for peace, protection, and meaning. And right now, as all three of them pray, missiles are flying over the Middle East, bombs are falling, public gatherings have been banned in Israel, and mosques, churches, and synagogues are all shut down in the very land all three religions claim as holy. Everyone is praying. Everyone believes God is on their side, and the bombs do not seem to care whose God is real. Christopher Hitchens once said that religion is the main source of hatred in the world. Not one of many sources, the main one. And right now, in March of 2026, we are watching the most vivid illustration of that truth play out in real time. Three religions, one war zone, zero answers from heaven. This is that story. Let us start with the timing, because the timing is what makes this moment so extraordinary and so damning. Purim is one of the most joyful celebrations in the Jewish calendar. It tells the story of Esther, a young Jewish woman living in ancient Persia who married the king and hid her identity until a plot to massacre the Jewish people was uncovered. Through her courage, the story goes, the tables were turned. The people who planned to destroy the Jews were themselves destroyed. It is a story of divine intervention, of God flipping the script, of survival against impossible odds. Jews celebrate it with costumes, feasting, public readings of the Book of Esther, and a commandment to be so joyful that they cannot tell the difference between the hero and the villain of the story. It is supposed to be the most fun day of the Jewish year. But here is what makes 2026 different. Ancient Persia, where the Purim story takes place, is modern-day Iran. And right now, Israel and Iran are engaged in active military conflict. The chief rabbi of the United Kingdom, Ephraim Mirvis, stood before a united synagogue gathering as military strikes began. He prayed for a reenactment of the miracle of Purim. He said that in the same way the tables were turned in ancient Persia and the Jews triumphed, so too today in Iran, which he called the modern-day state of Persia, may there be a swift and absolute victory. A religious leader in 2026 is using a story that is 2,500 years old to justify a modern military operation. He is not calling for peace. He is not praying for diplomacy. He is invoking a biblical narrative to bless bombs. If that hits you, hold on. Because if you think you support this channel and the kind of thinking we do here, now is the time to prove it. Hit that subscribe button right now, turn on notifications, and drop a comment below telling me which of these three religions you think has the weakest claim to moral authority. Let us have that conversation. Now, let's continue. At the exact same time, over 1 billion Muslims around the world entered Ramadan. Ramadan is the holiest month in the Islamic calendar. It is a time of fasting from dawn to sunset. No food, no water, no physical pleasures during daylight hours. The purpose is spiritual discipline, empathy for the poor, closeness to God, and community. Muslims are supposed to spend Ramadan in deep reflection, extra prayer, charity, and reading the Quran. It is meant to be a month of peace, a reset, a spiritual cleansing. But for Muslims in Gaza, in parts of the Middle East, and in conflict zones across the region, Ramadan 2026 is not a time of peace. It is a time of survival. Mosques are closed in areas under attack. Families who would normally gather for iftar, the evening meal that breaks the fast, are instead huddling in shelters. The ceasefire in Gaza remains fragile and uncertain. Muslim communities are fasting while their neighborhoods are being shelled, praying while the walls around them shake, and asking God for protection while receiving none. And then there are the Christians. Hundreds of millions of Christians around the world are observing Lent, the 40-day season leading up to Easter that represents Jesus' 40 days of fasting in the wilderness. Lent is about sacrifice, repentance, and preparing the soul for the promise of resurrection. It's supposed to be a time of quiet introspection. But in the Holy Land, the very place where Christians believe Jesus walked, taught, was crucified, and rose again, churches are affected by the ban on public gatherings. Christian communities across the Middle East have been caught in the crossfire of conflicts between Jewish and Muslim powers for decades. They are the smallest religious minority in the region, and every time the bombs start falling, they suffer alongside everyone else, their prayers drowned out by the same explosions. So here we are, March 2026, 3 religions, 3 sacred seasons, all happening simultaneously, all of them praying, and all of them caught in a war that their own scriptures, their own leaders, and their own claims of divine truth helped to create. Christopher Hitchens spent decades arguing that religion does not cause conflict as a side effect. It causes conflict as a main feature. He wrote that religion is the original form of totalitarianism because it demands absolute submission to an authority that cannot be questioned, cannot be proven, and cannot be held accountable. And when 2 or more of these absolute authorities collide over the same piece of land, the same holy city, the same ancient claim, there can be no compromise. How do you compromise with God? How do you negotiate with a divine mandate? You can negotiate over territory. You can negotiate over resources. You can negotiate over borders, trade, and political power. But you cannot negotiate over whose God promised this land to whose people. That is the trap. That is the poison. And it has been killing people for thousands of years. Look at what is happening on the ground right now. In Israel, the government has banned public gatherings for safety during the military conflict. Synagogues where Jews would celebrate Purim together are closed or restricted. Mosques where Muslims would pray during Ramadan are shut. Churches where Christians would observe Lent are affected. The state that exists because of a religious claim, the belief that God promised this land to the Jewish people, is now unable to let any of the 3 religions that revere that land actually practice their faith openly. The land that God supposedly gave them is too dangerous for worship. If that is not the clearest possible indictment of the idea that religion brings peace, I do not know what is. And it is not just Israel. The Gulf states have condemned Iran's retaliatory strikes. Turkey is opening mosques in Gaza, not out of spiritual generosity, but as a projection of religious and political influence. Saudi Arabia, the custodian of Islam's holiest sites, navigates its own calculations between religious authority and geopolitical power. Every player in this conflict wraps their actions in the language of faith. Every government invokes God when it is convenient and ignores God when it is not. Religion is not the background music to this war. It is the sheet music. It is the score the entire performance is built on. Hitchens understood this better than almost anyone. In his book, God is Not Great, he dedicated an entire chapter to the Israel and Palestine conflict and how religion turned what could have been a solvable territorial dispute into an apocalyptic confrontation with no end. He argued that if you took religion out of the equation, you would have 2 groups of people fighting over a small piece of Mediterranean coastline, and rational negotiation could have solved it decades ago. But you cannot take religion out because religion is the entire reason both sides believe they have an irrevocable, eternal, God-given right to the same land. The Jewish claim goes back to the covenant with Abraham. The Islamic claim goes back to Muhammad's night journey to Jerusalem and the centuries of Muslim rule over the region. The Christian claim goes back to the life and death of Jesus in Jerusalem and Bethlehem. 3 irreconcilable claims, 3 divine mandates that cannot coexist. 3 sets of believers, each absolutely certain that God is on their side. Stop and ask yourself this. If God exists, and if God is truly speaking to all 3 of these religions, then what exactly is he saying? Is he telling the Jews that Purim will be reenacted and they will be victorious over modern Persia? Is he telling the Muslims that Ramadan prayers will bring them protection and justice? Is he telling the Christians that the sacrifice of Lent will lead to resurrection and redemption? Because all 3 of those things cannot be true at the same time. If God is answering the prayers of one group, he is by definition ignoring the prayers of the other 2. And if he is ignoring 2 out of 3 groups who sincerely believe in him, what kind of God is that? And if he is ignoring all 3, which is what the evidence overwhelmingly suggests, then what exactly is the point of praying? Now listen, if this is the kind of content that makes you think, that challenges you, that says the things nobody else is saying, I need you to do something for me right now. Like this video. Share it with one person who needs to hear it. Leave a comment telling me whether you have ever questioned prayer after watching a disaster unfold. That engagement is how this channel grows, and it is how we keep making content that cuts through the noise. Now let's bring it home. This pattern we are watching in 2026 is not new. It is the oldest pattern in human history. Every major war in the Middle East has been fought with God on both sides. The Crusades were fought by Christians who believed God wanted them to reclaim the Holy Land from Muslims who believed God wanted them to defend it. The 30 Years' War killed 8 million people because Catholics and Protestants could not agree on how to worship the same God. The partition of India in 1947 was driven by the belief that Hindus and Muslims could not share a nation, and the result was one of the largest mass migrations and death events in human history. Rwanda, Northern Ireland, the Balkans, Sudan, Nigeria, the list stretches across every continent and every century. And in every single case, the people on both sides prayed. They all prayed. They prayed before the killing, and they prayed after. They prayed for victory, and they prayed for forgiveness. And the killing happened anyway. Hitchens pointed out something devastating about this pattern. He said that religion does not just fail to prevent war, it makes wars worse. Because a secular conflict has a natural endpoint. Eventually, both sides get tired, or the resources run out, or a new generation decides the fight is not worth continuing. But a religious conflict has no natural endpoint, because the stakes are not territory or money. The stakes are eternity. When you believe that God has commanded you to fight, surrender is not just a political defeat, it is a spiritual betrayal. When you believe that dying for your cause earns you paradise, death isn't a deterrent, it's an incentive. When you believe that the other side isn't just wrong, but is an enemy of God, compromise isn't diplomacy, it's heresy. That's why the Israel-Palestine conflict has lasted nearly 80 years with no resolution. That's why Sunni and Shia Muslims have been killing each other for 14 centuries. That's why Catholic and Protestant violence in Ireland lasted for decades despite the 2 groups living on the same island, speaking the same language, and worshiping the same Jesus. Religion doesn't resolve conflict. Religion removes the off switch. And here is what bothers me the most about this moment. If you go on social media right now, you will find Jewish voices posting Purim messages of hope and faith. You will find Muslim voices sharing Ramadan reflections on patience and mercy. You will find Christian voices offering Lenten meditations on sacrifice and love. And every single one of those messages is sincere. These are real people with real faith, genuinely believing that their God is a God of love, of justice, of compassion, and they are right to want those things. The desire for peace, for justice, for meaning, Those are the best impulses human beings have. The tragedy is that religion hijacks those impulses and attaches them to claims that are mutually exclusive, to books that contradict each other, to gods that demand loyalty and punish doubt. The Jewish person praying for peace and the Muslim person praying for peace and the Christian person praying for peace all want the same thing, but their religions will not let them find it together, because each religion insists that its version of God, its version of history, and its version of the truth is the only one that matters. Hitchens said something in one of his final interviews that has stayed with me. He said that the real argument against religion is not that it is false, though it is. It is that it is a surrender of reason, a surrender of the one tool that actually allows human beings to solve their problems. Faith asks you to stop thinking. Faith asks you to trust without evidence. Faith asks you to believe that an ancient text written by men who did not know where the sun went at night contains the answer to a 21st century geopolitical crisis. And the result is what we see right now: 3 billion people praying to 3 different versions of God for 3 different outcomes while the real world burns around them. Prayer is not action. Faith is not a strategy. And God, if He exists, has never once stopped a bomb. So here is the question I want to leave you with. If 3 of the world's most powerful religions are all observing their most sacred seasons at the same time, and all of them are praying for peace, and none of them are getting it, what does that tell us? It does not tell us that they are praying wrong. It does not tell us that they lack faith. It tells us that prayer does not work. It tells us that the God they are all praying to is either unable to help, unwilling to help, or simply not there. And until humanity is willing to accept one of those 3 options and start solving its problems with reason, evidence, and genuine human empathy, instead of ancient texts and invisible authorities, the bombs will keep falling, on all of them. Christopher Hitchens dedicated his life to saying the things that religious power did not want anyone to hear. And if he were alive today, watching 3 religions pray while the world burns, I believe he would say what he always said: religion poisons everything. But here is what I will add. The antidote is not more faith. The antidote is not a better religion. The antidote is reason. And reason does not require prayer. It requires courage. If this video made you think differently about what's happening in the world right now, I need you to subscribe to this channel. We are building a community of people who refuse to accept easy answers, who refuse to let ancient books dictate modern morality, and who believe that reason, not faith, is the only path forward. Subscribe, hit the bell, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and I will see you in the next one. Reason over rituals, always.